Orleans Humanist Perspective, presented by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, following our few principles of humanism.
We're committed to the use of science and reason for understanding the universe and for solving human problems. We're skeptical of untested claims of knowledge, but we're open to new ideas.
We are concerned with securing justice and fairness in society and in ending intolerance and discrimination. We are committed to the total separation of religion and government.
We affirm humanism as a realistic alternative to the theologies of despair and the ideologies of violence. We reject the concept of an afterlife and believe in living a full and rewarding life here and now.
We value and respect each individual's right to judge and lead their lives according to their own position, as long as it's respectful of other people, living in a free society.
We hope you enjoy today's program and others in the weeks to follow. Maybe he's getting ready for us over there.
You can hear the music.
Hello, folks. This is Harry Greenberger, your host for today, and we're happy to have you with us again. My guest today is Timothy, help me, Kemery. Timothy has been on this show previously, and we were talking at that time about memory.
That's correct.
And so today we are essentially going to talk about memory part 2, although there is much more that we might talk about, and I would have no objection to our doing that.
We'll ramble around.
Because Timothy does operate a clinic on the West Bank of New Orleans and does consultation for people. And in addition to that, he has an organization that does research.
Clinical trials, yes.
And so there's a lot we could talk about.
Yes.
I personally am interested in the memory topic, and as I have explained, most of the people who attend the meetings of our New Orleans Secular Humanist Association are middle and upper age folks, and when I talk with them, before or after meetings, the subject of memory comes up, and almost everyone, when I complain about my bad memory, they say, well, me too. I've got the same thing. I mean, this is so widespread that when you get older, you have these memory problems at various levels. Maybe minor, or it may be absolutely debilitating.
Correct.
All right. At our last session, you had said something that I found a bit alarming. And it had to do with Alzheimer's, which is memory related as well. And you said at the age of 65, 1 out of 8 people will wind up with Alzheimer's. And at the age of 85 and over 85, 1 out of 2 would wind up with Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And you're saying that is statistically valid.
That is a currently accepted, yes.
All right. Well, that worries the hell out of me. But then this program is not about me. It's about.
No, but I think you are reflective of our community at large. I think most people who are, well, like you said, secular humanists. It's like most people who are of an age where reflection becomes important. Getting older, I mean, we think about ourselves, we think about our life. You have a larger lifespan, so things that have meaning, and things that have meaning in general to society, as well as meaning to you and me personally, can become, more a part of our daily thinking and reflection. And then once you're introspective in that matter, once your internal life has become more valuable and more pronounced to you. A lot of times you're just more aware of your own internal cognition and your cognitive processes, and what you are really saying is that people our age notice changes. I mean, if you're younger and, your changes in memory when you're younger are going to be related to the fact that maybe you drank too much last night and you can't remember something, you have some amnesia, or you smoked some marijuana and your brain just went in all different kinds of directions and you couldn't get focused. And those are related to like adding toxic substances, which kind of screws up your brain. But when you get older and on a daily basis at your job or whatever, and you realize, well, you're having a hard time remembering the name of somebody you had an appointment with last week, or you having a hard time remembering who was in Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest. Who was that man? And it's like you have a hard time retrieving certain pieces of information that you had a great facility to do previously.
Okay,
now that's beginning to.
It is factual. It isn't that now you're noticing it more or less than you might have at an earlier age. You have lost some of that capacity to remember.
Well, exactly right, and so not remembering occurs at varying points of our lives for varying reasons. But as we get older, it's beginning to occur because we are getting older. And,
it's happening in our brain.
It's happening in our brain.
Something is going
Something
on
has changed.
up there.
Something has changed.
All right.
That's a great jumping off point, because what we're going to be talking about here is that people are alarmed when they notice that there is a change in them. And change, the concept of change is really, really important, because like with your memory, you must be able to look back over a period of time and say, well, what I'm doing today, I didn't do a year ago or 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it might be an insidious, ever-increasing process, but it is a process. And what I want to say is that there is normal memory loss associated with aging. It's as though our brains, and this is a generally accepted fact, that our brains were designed to reach an absolute peak. When else but during our reproductive period, right? When your body is robust and it's like there's genetic fulfillment, and you're having children and raising children and being involved in life, and you're more robust physically, your muscles and so forth, and everything evolves.
Just as an aside, you said something that piqued my curiosity.
Uh-huh.
You said our brains were designed by whom?
Well, I mean, that's you can say by evolution or by history or by God's finger or by God's finger in that process, or however you want to conceptualize it.
What you meant by they were designed, but
no, that's exactly what I meant.
Okay.
And it's not like
it is not. You're saying that it is not abnormal to lose memory capacity. That is
no. I think it's as normal to lose memory capacity as it is for us to lose our physical abilities.
Right.
People generally don't have hip replacements when they're in their 30s or 40s unless there's an accident or something. When you're in your 60s, late 50s, 60s, and 70s, your bones are deteriorating. So there's a change in the metabolic process that occurs, and bones get more brittle, so they break. So there's more hip replacements. So your brain ages, and so some of the functions of your brain are not done with the same degree of efficiency as before. So it wears out just as your body is wearing out.
All right, but now a person of 60, say, who has not really taken good care of his body, could then start going to a gym.
Correct.
And working out and actually improve his physical capabilities.
Yes.
Can a person with deteriorating memory capacity, is there something they can do, like going to the gym, to overcome and reverse some of that loss?
Yeah, and I think that yes, I think the answer to that question is yes, depending on the circumstance. In the large majority of cases, if you're in your 60s and you're beginning to notice these changes, It's like you have to look at your life and how you're leading your life and what are you in effect doing to your body, because in some respects the same is true for somebody in their 20s, 30s, and 40s as in your 60s. It's just that in your 60s, it's like my dad used to say, if my dad knew he was going to live to 90, he'd have taken much better care of himself, right? His body would have gotten around better. Well, in terms of your mind, if you have hypertension and you don't take your high blood pressure medicine, if you have diabetes and you don't take your diabetes medication, if you have high cholesterol and you don't take your cholesterol medication, if you have major depression and you don't take an antidepressant, if you have a whole host of physical illnesses and you're not addressing it, then you are going to have a cognitive decline, perhaps reversible, but related to those things. And with regard to hypertension and smoking and things of that sort, you are going to have vascular changes inside of your brain, which will really long-term affect you, and sometimes affect you in an irreversible manner.
When you say affect you, those things you mentioned were like alcohol, cigarettes, everything. Do they affect your memory?
They affect your ability to remember things. They affect your ability of your brain to do many other things, because what we're talking about memory right now.
Yes.
But so let me go back and reframe it. So if you're taking care of yourself physically and you are getting a reasonable amount of exercise, because your brain is part of your body, and your brain is going to respond positively to exercise just as your arms and your legs and your abs do. And you will find that people who exercise regularly will have more energy, feel more alert, more focused, generally sleep better, will wake up and have more energy. They're producing endorphins, so there's this feeling of elevation, of mood elevation, just on the basis of more physical exercise. So, if you're eating right, and you're eating the right kinds of food, and taking care of yourself and not smoking and not drinking too much, your body will feel better, and so will your brain, and so will your mind. So it will be working much more efficiently and effectively. But what I want to say is that the decline that we're talking about normal memory loss, the difficulty remembering things. Well, a lot of people who develop that, you, me, virtually everybody will develop some memory loss and difficulty in retrieving things. That can level out and stabilize and just be a pain. Be a pain. You're out, you're having dinner with somebody, and you're having a conversation, a wonderful conversation, and you want to make a point, but in order to make your point, you have to remember this, and it won't happen. And that becomes a very frustrating thing. But there are all kind of workarounds that you can do with that. But memory is only one part of cognition. So the people who have memory problems associated with aging, which is normal, some people will progress to a stage of mild cognitive impairment. So it's not just being able to retrieve memories, it's other aspects of cognition. And that's going to be actually the making of memories. And what we find with people who eventually develop Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia is that they gradually lose the ability to make short-term memories.
In other words, if someone should tell me how to get to their house where
Correct.
I've never been there before.
Correct.
And I get started and then I don't remember what they told me where to turn.
Correct.
That's what you're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. Or let me give you an example, and I don't know whether I mentioned this last time. A really clear example of this would be you get home in the afternoon, you kind of rush in, you got some groceries and stuff, and you put everything down, you put the groceries away, and then you're going out the house the next morning. It's like, oh man, where are my car keys? They're not in the right place. So I came in, and then I put the groceries down. Oh, I put the groceries down, and then I put them right over there inside by the little TV in the kitchen. So you go, there they are. You retrace your steps, right? Someone who is developing cognitive impairment will not have made that memory. I mean, they may have made it, but it'll be fragmentary at the beginning. They'll start losing chunks of that. So they will not be able to retrace their steps because that memory has not been made and stored.
Now, I know that you do consultation for people.
Yes.
And if a person came to you And let's say that they're age 65, so 1 out of 8 of them might get Alzheimer's.
Right. Now we have people with early onset Alzheimer's in their 50s.
I understand,
Okay.
but if this person comes to you, as a client, and they describe to you how they can't remember where they put the keys, where do you go from there?
Well, there are a whole variety of cognitive tests that you can give someone, which will help determine their level of cognitive function. And it's not going to simply be related to those short-term memory, but it's also going to be related to, do you know what today's date is? Do you know what day of the week it is? Do you know what month it is? What day of the year? Do you know the name of the place that you're in? These are orientation type questions. Do you know what time of day it is?
Those are the questions they ask in court to determine whether you're sane.
Well, they ask those questions to determine whether you're oriented, right? But in a total assessment of a person, what you want to do is to be able to see actually not just how their mind works and whether they can subtract 3 from 100 and keep going, or they know how many quarters are in $12.65, and there are all kind of questions that will evaluate cognitive function. But the cognitive function is also related to your daily function. So it's like, do you lose a lot of things in the house and forget where you put things? Do you sometimes not remember exactly where you are, even though you're in your own house? Can you get about your neighborhood? Do you see what I'm saying?
When you have someone who has come to you, as a client, and you ask those questions, and you find out that they, in fact, say, yes, I don't know where I put my keys, I don't know this, I don't know that, what do you do for them?
Well, and that brings us into the area of assessment.
Okay.
So if a person comes to me and I assess them and I say, well, listen, I think that you're having significant trouble with your memory. Now, significant trouble with your memory means that it's impacted your function. I mean, maybe you can still bathe and dress yourself and go to the bathroom. Your activities of daily living are fine, but perhaps you say, well, I'm having a harder time cooking because I can't remember the things that I put in, and sometimes I forget things on the stove, and people don't want me to use the stove anymore. They want me to use just the microwave. And so, it's like those types of changes indicate that a person is having a problem. Now, that might mean that they're perhaps in an earlier stage of dementia, because a lot of times these people are still working and still functioning, and depending on their job, they might not be doing their job as well as they have been, but they're compensating and writing notes and things to remember, and people, maybe coworkers, are helping them out. So it's like, the cognitive part of the assessment is but one part of an assessment. The other part is going to have to be physical, because you have to look at a person's body to see if there's any other cause of what they're experiencing. Are they depressed? You notice if they're shaking. Well, is there possibly a neurological, or like Parkinson's disease or something? And there are a whole variety of different types of dementias which require investigation. If you're concerned primarily about Alzheimer's disease, there are blood tests to determine genetics. There's a family history. Does your mama have it? Did your daddy have it? Did your aunt? Did your uncle? Did your siblings? And once you start saying yes to these things, then you're increasing in your own mind the probability that maybe there is something here that's genetic and related to the history.
Of course, regarding the genetic end of it, middle-aged and older people, their parents didn't live such long lives. They
That's
didn't
correct.
probably make it to 65.
That's
so
right.
You don't know whether they were carrying the likelihood of Alzheimer's, or you just don't know.
Well, that's right, and statistics get really biased. So, for instance, the most recent thing in the last few months is that the statistical evaluation stated that women who develop Alzheimer's disease will deteriorate more rapidly than men.
Okay.
But women live a lot longer than men, so
Yeah.
the older women that develop it are liable to deteriorate more quickly because they're older and so forth. So you have to. There's a lot of caveats in there, But the idea is that the current thinking about what causes Alzheimer's disease in terms of brain problem is a collection of plaque material in between the brain cells and within the brain cells, and that stopping that process, can lead to an arrest in the disease. That's the theory. So they can actually take an MRI and analyze what's actually going on in your brain in terms of the plaque load, and to see if you have a lot of plaque that may indicate that you have Alzheimer's disease. It can also tell you if you have other things going on that might also be influencing what's happening with your brain. And that's a really important thing. So you have blood tests, and you have other types of physical assessments. Some people have hypertension that causes all kinds of unattended hypertension, or unattended diabetes, or unattended thyroid disease can really impact. So you can address those things, and those memory problems will improve. But the problem is that when people go to a physician, if it's a gerontologist or if it's a neurologist, and the person says, I think I'm having trouble with my memory, then they're going to want you to have some kind of total assessment that tells us where you are. We were talking earlier about sleep. Sleep apnea can be a real problem with day-to-day function and memory and so forth. So the doctor has to be willing to look into it. And a lot of times people come in, if you're 75 years old, and you're enjoying a good life and you're healthy and robust, and you come in and you say, well, doc, I feel like there's something wrong with my memory. And they can say, well, you're 75 years old. But sometimes that's not a really good response, because it isn't very reassuring. No, it's not very reassuring. And so, you're going to want to have a cognitive assessment. And if you go to like a university, or if you go to Ochsner, or if you go to a neurologist or gerontologist, they're going to be more interested in making sure that all the squares on that checkerboard are covered, and you're going to get good treatment. Because there are medicines that will help you short term if it's Alzheimer's disease, and there are clinical trials in which the medications are expected to be much more efficacious. But the thing that I really want to say is that, truthfully, with Alzheimer's and with some of the other dementias, the real problem we have is that by the time we have a symptom that alarms us, by the time we notice a change in our cognition, the process of plaque generation and other metabolic processes that have led to this, it's probably been going on for a number of years, 5 to 10 years. But it's like a stealth fighter. I mean, you don't even know it's happening. And even though it's happening and it's challenging your brain is such a magnificent thing. It has already begun to respond to the changes, and it's reworking its networks and everything. So it's like in our consciousness, our command center, we don't even know there's a problem. But so even before that, the brain is already organizing itself. And by the time we have a problem, your brain has already exhausted normal pathways of reconstruction. I hear what you're saying. And so really, what we really need is some sort of cognitive or biological test that will take someone who has no symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, no symptoms of dementia, but maybe whose mother had it, or whose father had it, or they have a blood type that says they may, or a genetic factor in their blood that says they may develop Alzheimer's disease. You need some sort of test to say whether or not this person likely will develop it. If the answer to that question is yes, we have a cognitive test, and it says you might, it's like you get on medicine, you get on these new medicines right then, before you even get symptoms.
And those medicines will do what?
It'll stop the process of generation of plaques and other materials that will ultimately cause you to begin losing your memory.
Let me be sure I understand that, and then I want to ask you a question. This medication that stops the generation of plaque, which is the cause of Alzheimer's.
Many forms of Alzheimer's disease.
So you're saying there is medication that can stop the progress toward Alzheimer's?
There are medications that are not available to the public that are in clinical trials. and there are 3 or 4 or 5 compounds, and they're in testing, and it's like the earlier a person is in terms of their symptoms, the earlier the onset, and the more robust the intervention, it dramatically slows the advance of the disease. But you have to remember, these are people whose brains have already been seriously affected, although their symptoms are still mild. If you back up a year or 2 or 3 or 4 before they have had symptoms at all, and then you intervene, then you push that away.
But you don't know to intervene if there are no symptoms.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. So there are some signs, some warning signs about Alzheimer's disease. Did your mother have it? Did your father have it? You do a blood test.
I want to ask a question.
Sure.
I get in the mail regularly advertising material, actually, from doctors offering cures for all kinds of things, including memory loss. I get these things from doctors who they want to sell you something,
right?
And they said the clinical tests have proven that this can reverse memory loss. Are those people all phonies?
Well, it's like no, I'm not going to. I wouldn't say that, but I would say that, for instance, if you are having a lot of memory problems, and let's just say that part of the problem for you would be depression, you could take all of those drugs and it wouldn't change your memory problems. But if you took an antidepressant, your memory would improve. And it's like, well, did that cure your memory problems? No, it really treated your depression, and it got rid of a side effect of one of the problems that you were having. So it isn't to say that there are not a lot of vitamins and naturally occurring antioxidants and all these things that are going to positively impact the memory process. But there's no saying that it is absolutely going to work for you. It's what it really says is, if you take this drug or these drugs, we feel like you are going to be getting all of the natural vitamins and ingredients that your brain needs to be healthy and to remember
generally
things.
What they're selling is not a drug. It's the berry from some tree in West Africa.
Well, it's an antioxidant or something like that. It's a naturally.
But you're saying that I should save my money and not order that stuff?
Well, no. I mean, I think you could order it. It's like they probably haven't had a lot of clinical trials for those sort of things. I think it's much better to eat a little less meat, eat more fish, eat a lot of blueberries and broccoli and greens, and the same sort of thing that you're supposed to do your whole life to do that. If you have certain deficiencies in their blood tests, if you have a B12 deficiency, or if you have these other things, you're going to feel terrible. If you have a thyroid disorder, you're going to feel terrible.
Okay,
get all of that fixed.
Timothy,
so be careful about where you spend your money.
Our time is up.
How does this happen so quickly?
I know that you could have talked about many more things other than memory, but that was
absolutely.
This was our session on memory part 2.
Yes.
And I'm certain that folks watching this show will appreciate what they were able to learn today. We thank you. We'll stick around again.